the bread turns green or blue, what word would you use to describe it then?
Then it would be moldy.
Welcome to English with Lewis. Let's go!
Hello, everybody, and welcome back once again to English with Lewis. And another week, another guest. So let me introduce to you Ash. Hello, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is all mine. So we've just been having a little bit of a chit chat, a bit of small talk before I pressed record. And for people who might not know you, this is your moment. Ash, introduce yourself.
Sure thing. So I'm Ash. I'm an English teacher, a native British English teacher, and I've been teaching for the past 4 to 5 years, and I do a lot of content, especially on Instagram and TikTok, and I enjoy sharing my passion for English with all of you lovely people out there. And that's really me. That's me in a nutshell. I'm Ash_British English.
Fantastic. A lovely expression you just used as well, in a nutshell. So that's me. That's Ash in a nutshell,
Indeed.
which is another way of saying in summary.
Perfect, yeah.
Lovely. So you've been teaching for the last 4 or 5 years. At what moment did you start to consider becoming an English teacher, and why?
Well, gosh. So I was originally a professional dancer, and that was what I did as a career. And I enjoyed it a lot, but I found that I enjoyed teaching dance more than actually doing it, which is quite interesting. And so the more I taught dance, the more I kind of understood that I had a bit of a passion for teaching. And I was teaching dance in a lot of countries where people are trying to learn English, really. Places in Asia and places in, Central Asia and Europe as well. And a lot of people ask me, don't teach in our language, teach in English. We want you to teach dance in English. And I said, okay, sure. And I was teaching dance in English. And a lot of them became, fascinated by the English that I was teaching, and they wanted to learn more. So I then ended up teaching just English without the dancing aspect. And I realized, wow, I enjoy this a lot. I'm having a lot of fun. I get to meet a lot of new people. I get to share my passion. And so I decided, why not go all in on this career, really?
Perfect. Interesting. So I guess one thing led to another. Naturally, you were teaching dancing and then you had a demand. So you decided to change and switch it. But it sounds like you were killing 2 birds with 1 stone as well.
Indeed, I was really, yes. And I think a lot of people were very happy that I was teaching them both English and dance at the same time. And you'd be surprised how quickly people pick things up when they're associating a word with a movement. Actually, it really helps. And there's a whole kind of school of thought that goes around teaching people language mixed with movement. I think it really, really helps a lot of people. But yes, indeed, I think it was a very natural progression from what I was doing before to where I am now. So I'm very grateful for all the opportunities that I've been given. And I'm very excited to continue that progression going forward.
It sounds interesting, and I must confess that I'm terrible at dancing. I have no rhythm at all. I have 2 left feet, as they say. So do you have any tips for me?
Oh gosh. Well, I guess I spend a lot of time practicing and rehearsing and learning all the techniques. So I would just say be patient. That's the one thing I would say, be patient and find your own way of moving, really. That's the key thing. But yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy thing to do. So
it's a marathon, not a sprint, for sure.
Indeed it is.
Excellent, fantastic. So this happened from dancing then into teaching, and during this time, have you been teaching just online or in person too?
So I've actually been teaching, both online and in person. For example, I started my teaching career out teaching at a primary school, which is what most people might see an elementary school. So I was teaching in a primary school, and I was working both with English as foreign language students, but I was also working with, normal students and SEND students as well, students with special needs. And it was such a fulfilling and, worthwhile endeavor for me. It was really fantastic, and I still miss it today. I still miss teaching at a primary school level today. But then I just progressed and went forward and started teaching more and more online as the demand kind of picked up, really, and more people across the world were asking for my classes, asking for my tutoring. I realized, okay, I can't be in all places at the same time. I have to just transition to online teaching. So it's a blessing in that I am able to meet tons of different people from tons of different backgrounds and work and teach and coach people across the world. But it's also a bit of a curse that I don't get to see so many people face to face anymore.
Exactly. No, I know exactly what you mean. And I've been working exclusively online since the pandemic started. And I
Mm.
do still prefer it. And I love the freedom that it gives me to be able to travel wherever I want and continue working. So I don't need to book
Mhm.
time off. But
Mhm.
right now, we're both recording this from our houses. I'm in the corner of my apartment. So then between classes, usually I need to get out, I need to breathe fresh air. And sometimes it's difficult to strike a balance between working remotely and teaching online and actually socializing, getting out of the house. So
Mm.
I'm curious, how do you balance it and manage your time to ensure you don't go mental and go crazy being at home all the time?
Yeah, well, I do quite a lot of stuff on top of the teaching as well, so it's definitely a challenge to organize everything. But I just try and stick to my diary. That's the key thing. Just stick to my calendar, and as soon as something comes up, I note it down. Whether that's a video idea, whether that's a class, or whether that's whatever it could be, right? Whatever it is, I note it down as soon as possible. And so that does mean I've got lists and lists all over my phone and all over my desk and things like that. That's very true. But I think it's really important for me to just get it down. Otherwise, it gets lost in the void of the back of my mind, really. So I think that's the key thing. Note it down.
Exactly. Write everything down.
Yeah.
Jot it down. Note it down. Lovely
Yeah.
phrasal verbs.
Exactly.
Moving on from this, I know recently you were living in Japan and you've just
Mhm.
moved back to the UK. So, how was your experience in Japan? I'm all ears. I'm listening.
Honestly, it was brilliant. It was absolutely fantastic. Uh, of course, living in Japan and traveling to Japan are two very different things. It's a whole different world.
Mhm.
And I had visited Japan a few times before in the past. But yeah, this time was living there as a different experience, and it was great. Living in Tokyo was very busy,
Mhm.
and you talked just now about having, a balance between social life and work. And I'll tell you right now, no one in Tokyo has a good balance between social life and work
I
and
heard
everything. Yeah,
like workaholics everywhere.
I know, it's crazy. So yes, I think it was fun, but it was definitely short-term fun, and I don't think it was like sustainable for me over a long period of time.
Mhm.
Most of the other teachers that I met whilst I was there also moved out of the city and lived further away just to escape the rat race, really, that is Tokyo. And it's a crazy experience. It's eye-opening. At times, it's breathtaking. At times, it's extremely exhausting. It was a good experience, and I've kind of wrapped that up in a nice little bow,
Uh-huh.
put it in the corner, and moving on to the next chapter.
Excellent. But you're used to living in a big city, right? So if I'm not
Oh,
wrong, you lived in London. So is there a big difference between living in London, which is a huge city, and living in Tokyo, which is a mega, mega enormous city?
yeah, it is. Yeah, it's like what's it, megalopolis, I think you call it. Yeah, so it's huge. I think when you actually live in Tokyo, you see it as just different cities. The different areas are actually different cities almost. So
Mhm.
it doesn't feel too overwhelming when you break it down like that. But yeah, it's a very crazy place, and I think it's quite challenging to make very, let's say, to make friends with people in some situations because The culture there it takes a long time to break the ice between two people, and it can be quite tough. And I was fortunate enough to go with my wife, but I think if I'd been alone, it might have been a little bit lonely, perhaps at times. But yeah, it's tough. Whereas London, you can get chatting to anyone in London. You can just sit on the tube and someone will start speaking to you, right? It might not be as familiar as say up north, but there's still more chances. There are more chances compared to Tokyo, I think.
Perfect. And you hinted at this work culture of people working extremely long hours, doing a lot of overtime. And I mentioned that a lot of them are known for being workaholics, addicted to work. Why do you think this is? What is the situation with this work-life culture?
I think it's because it's a very the system in Japan and the culture in Japan are very much reliant on this sense of hierarchy, where you follow the people above you in the hierarchy. And where it's different to say the UK is that the hierarchy is based on age. So someone who is young is less likely to get a role as a manager than someone who is older. Whether they have the same qualifications or whether the younger person is better qualified, it doesn't matter. It's generally to do with, this is your kind of your life. You'll start here and you'll get to this point at this age and this point at this age. And it's very planned out. And I think that's why people don't want to upset the status quo. They don't want to kind of show disrespect in that manner to people who are above them. Whereas in the UK, we're quite an individualist culture, especially in the West, but in the UK. And, if we finish at 5, we finish at 5, right? It doesn't matter everyone doesn't really care what you do after that time. It's not like, oh, why didn't they, stay over? Or because maybe they had something else they have to do. We don't kind of get involved in that. We just say, oh, they stayed until when they're meant to stay, they can go home. But in Japan, it's very much, you stay until the boss leaves. And if you don't, then you're not working hard enough. So there's a lot of mandatory unpaid overtime and little things like that where, you have to kind of go out of your way. And for them, it's a sign of respect, but it's kind of like sacrifice is seen as like a good thing. Sacrificing your time and your effort and your energy for like the cause of the business or whatever you're working for. Whereas in the UK, we're very much of the mentality of, 5 o'clock, switch off, my life now. And I think sometimes having that distinction between work life and home life is actually really important. And I think it's something that we do quite well. So it's definitely a lot easier to work in a British company than it is in a Japanese company, for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, great. It's nice. I think I kind of put you on the spot there. I saw your eyes when I asked you the questions, like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
You were thinking on your feet. That was a great answer. It was really interesting as well. And just going over some of the expressions that you use naturally there, you spoke about upsetting the status quo. If you upset the status quo, you kind of disrupt the establishment. Another expression which you used was to go out of your way to do something. So if you go out of your way to do something, it's like you make an extra effort in order to do something. And one final expression which came to my mind was that it's none of your business. So given that we're speaking about companies and about privacy in one way or another, if you finish at 5 o'clock and people are asking you about why you're finishing and not doing overtime, you can just respond by saying, it's none of your business. Like, it has nothing to do with you. And
exactly.
Very individual and private, and we generally tend to respect others' privacy.
100%. Yeah, that's definitely kind of like one of the core values in the UK, I think. One of the core British values is just, respecting people's privacy and what they do when they're not, at work or, in their team or whatever. Let them do their own thing, definitely.
Okay, wonderful. Now, moving on from that, your videos, the type of videos that you post, of course, it's a wide variety of stuff. But a type of video that you started posting more and more often recently are correcting bad English. So, tell me, why did you start making this kind of video, and what is your process for finding these dodgy videos and then going about correcting them?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting point. And I think I just want to kind of start by saying that, it's very difficult to find good resources for teachers, right? I think it's very, very challenging. And, I don't fault some of these teachers for teaching incorrect English online because it is challenging, especially when there's a very nuanced take of why something is the way it is. And yeah, there are some things that I can definitely sympathize with and empathize almost with. But that being said, there is let's say like a misinformation kind of swarm
Uh-huh.
hitting the hitting the
The
social
locust.
media sphere. Yeah, like a locust. Yeah, and I think that's because making English content, right? It's challenging to find and create new, unique things, right? But it's very easy to just copy something and then say it exactly word for word. And I see a lot of that. And what happens is when people do this copy and paste style content, they don't fact check it. They just take what works and then they just post it out. And sometimes they know it's incorrect, but just gets more views because then everyone is in the comments questioning, wait, am I wrong? Was I wrong for thinking this way? Was I wrong for thinking that? And so these kind of things get a lot of traction. They move very quickly. They spread very quickly. And there's no real way to help English learners and English students to avoid this kind of misinformation. There's no, in, let's say, other niches, other topics, like, let's say, medicine or fitness, there's a lot of content creators that are there and they provide good evidence and they fact check and they make sure that people are not, promoting misinformation or just saying rubbish, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have that in the English teaching sphere. There is none of that, right? But if you're, let's say, Oxford Dictionary, you need to do a lot of research. Your BBC English, you need to do a lot of research to be able to say what you want to say, to put out materials, learning materials, which is really important. But then somebody could also post their own learning material, which is incorrect, and get 10, 15, 20 times the amount of views as, say, a reputable, English material creator, right? Let's say like Oxford Dictionaries. So I think now that it's easier to create content that can be spread out to the far ends of social media, reaching millions and millions of people, it's just as important that people put in the time and the effort and the research to make sure that what they are teaching is not incorrect and it's not misleading English learners. And that's what I try and do. I try and, help people understand, hey, this is incorrect. This is how we would say it. Or this is unnatural. This is what native speakers would say. And I think that is sorely missing on the platform because we don't have this, fact checker. We don't have this way of checking anything and everything. So that's a key thing.
Exactly. Now, I think it's very important that you mention it and you bring up the fact that we do need to fact check, like we need to do the same with politics. Of course, you have different political parties which are spreading news and facts, and you have to do your own research at times before you can believe what they're saying. And it's the same for any niche, as you just said. I'm curious about how you actually go about doing it. Like, so do you message the creators before you upload it? What is your kind of process of doing this?
Okay, so normally, for most of the videos, a good 99% of the videos, I just find them. I just come across them. They just pop up on the screen and I see them. I go, that is weird.
I
That's
know.
wrong. Yeah. Well, normally my brain will just go, that sounds strange. Because I obviously see a lot of content. I see a lot of other English teachers online. So I go, that sounds strange. So then what I do is I analyze it. I say, okay, why is that wrong? That's the first question. Why is that wrong? Why does that sound weird? And then once I've identified it, then I will check to make sure that nobody else says it that way. Because obviously, I am a native speaker, but I have my biases, right? I speak British English, and I'm from the south of England. So, there are certain dialects or certain accents that might pronounce things in different ways or might have different variations of grammar or words, whatever. So then I fact check and I do a lot of research to try and find out why something is incorrect. So I will look at native speaker examples. I will try and find references in media, both written media like books and articles, and also spoken media like television, film, YouTube, all of that stuff. So I do a lot of research for each one, and then I try and find out why they might have made that mistake. And so then I'll also search that. I'll search for other creators or other people who have made this mistake, and then that's how I come across these copy and paste videos where like 10, 15, 20 people have just copied the same mistake and just put it out on their socials, and then it kind of builds from there. And once I identify the issue, then I make a video about it. I write the script, I film it, and then I post it. I do try and comment on the video in question. So the first video that pops up that I think, oh, that's wrong. I do comment on that and I do say this is the correct version or please check this. And I normally give them 7 days to just check it through. And that could even be to edit it and re-upload it. That could be to delete the video. That could be, I tend not to allow people to write a pinned comment because not a lot of people open the comments. So, and my personal philosophy and mentality is if the video is wrong in its whole, by itself, then it needs to be changed, right? You can't just change the caption or you can't just put a pinned comment. That doesn't help because not a lot of people watch the whole video or check all the comments or check the pinned caption or whatever it is. So you need to have a self-contained lesson within that video that makes sense and that teaches something correctly. And if that's not the case, then I'll probably make a video about it.
No, it's interesting because, like I said, before we started recording today, I was going through your profile and looking at some of these examples, and I was actually looking at some of the comments as well. And one thing that I didn't realize is that you get quite a lot of hate comments from other people for like actually bringing this to their attention. How do you react to these hate comments of people saying that you shouldn't be correcting other people's content?
So I think that the hate comment, which is always, why are you correcting other people's content? I think that's completely void and useless. So I don't pay attention to that. It doesn't bother me at all because you could say that about anything. I could say, why are you teaching British English when more people speak American English, right? Doesn't make a difference. It's completely unnecessary. So I get rid of that. When people say, oh, you're teaching correctly or you've made a mistake or this is wrong, that's when I'm interested. That's what I really like to see because I like to see people being critical. I like to see people exploring things. I have a lot of people who message, hey, you said this, but actually I found this. And then I'll say, well, actually native speakers have broken that rule there and that's incorrect. And I'm very appreciative when people go out of their way to find evidence to prove me wrong. And so far I haven't been, but I would rather that. I would rather be proved wrong than everybody agree with me and say, oh no, you're perfect and you're great, because that is stirring curiosity. It's building curiosity and it's getting people interested in doing their own research. And that's what I care about, because too many people sit there on their phones and they just consume, and they don't do their own research. They don't, identify the usage of what they've learned and they don't output it. And I'll keep saying that until I die probably, but that's the 3 important stages. Take in the information, then being able to identify it and find different examples of it in use, or, identify, oh, this person said this, I learned this the other day, and then using it for yourself. That's the output. And these two, the identifying and analyzing and output, are the 2 that people lack. And that's why they don't make any progress when it comes to their English. And so if I can get people excited and I can get people searching and, thinking, oh, is that correct? Let me check. Oh, it is correct. Oh, now I have something new to use. They've already spent more mental effort than just go, oh, that was cool. Oh, that was cool. Oh, that was cool.
Oh, dancing.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Oh, nice. All right. That's what I want to do. I want to get people curious about English. I want to get people to, really understand like the nuance and why something sounds native and why it doesn't, why something sounds natural, why it doesn't, and why things are the way they are, I think is really interesting, and people have a passion for it. And so, yeah, I take every hate comment like that as a benefit to me. I enjoy helping people find the information they're looking for. And I'll always provide evidence for everything I teach. So if I do a correction video, in all the correction videos, I try and provide some evidence in the very short amount of time I have. I try and provide as much evidence as possible, whether that's native speaker examples, or whether that is, dictionary examples, or whatever it is. I try and provide some kind of evidence because it's important that people can, see evidence-based learning. It's really important.
Exactly. Perfect. I mean, I think that was very clear and very passionate. I liked it. It was good. So if anybody is interested in why you do this or anything, maybe I'll put some timestamps in the bottom to get the Aki's speech for corrections.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
Manifesto.
Yeah, exactly. On that note as well, there were a few things I'd like to go over as well. One of them first is whom. So I noticed one of your videos for correcting was the use of whom, which simply put, nobody really uses whom. Like,
yeah,
as an English teacher, I wouldn't even be comfortable teaching it, partly because I'd panic because I've never used it in my life. But then secondly, because like it's pointless. There's no point in learning how to use whom. So that's one thing that we can quickly move on from. And recently, you were explaining the word stagnant.
Yes.
What does it mean? When can we use it?
Wow. Okay. So stagnant is quite a useful word, and we can use it to describe things that are not moving or not flowing. And because of that, because they have stayed still, they have then become maybe a bit smelly or old or stale. So the most common example, and that is a lake, right? If a lake or a puddle is stagnant, that means that the water just stopped flowing, it stopped moving. And often you'll see that the water turns green, it has lots of mosquitoes in it, and it's just generally gross and horrible to look at. And you definitely wouldn't want to drink stagnant water that's been sitting out for a long time. But then other things can be stagnant as well. For example, your economy can be stagnant, which means it's not flowing, it's not moving, it's not growing up. It's just kind of staying still, and a lot of other things can be stagnant as well. It just refers to like this lack of progression or movement, and as such, something has become a bit ugh.
Exactly. Ugh. And the reason why you were correcting this is because people were showing running water, and this running water was dirty. So
yes, exactly.
The object of it not flowing, because if it's running water, it precisely is flowing. So if you open the tap and you turn it and you have running water, it's never stagnant, but it might be dirty, or we just say it's brown, or it's horrible,
filthy, or
minging, disgusting,
filled with bits. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
bits,
I mean,
you name it.
These are all correct, and I think there are people who like to go into these philosophical arguments where yes, the water could have been stagnant for a period of time, and then it could have flowed through the taps. Which yes, that's very, very true. It could have been, but when we are teaching a new word to English learners, we need to be very clear about the examples that we use and make sure that these examples match up with the definitions, right? So, for example, if I wanted to show a car if I wanted to describe the word scratched, I wouldn't show a car that has been completely crushed into a square. I would show a car that had a scratch on it, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you could argue to a point that, well, there is a scratch on the car, but yes, the car is now a cube. So it's not really a car anymore in that sense. But so the idea is that we need to be very clear, and we don't want the learner to mistake something for something else, right? So if there is a very clear example we can use, we should strive to use that, the clearest and simplest example we can, as opposed to finding something where you have to go through a whole journey to maybe attribute the adjective to it, which doesn't make any sense at all from my perspective. But yes, if you're going to show stagnant water as a picture, don't choose an example where the water is flowing because that completely defeats the object.
Exactly. Perfect. So that was one. Let's do one more, but first use a nice verb, which I love, which is to strive. We need to strive to do something. If you strive to do something, it means that basically you try hard to do something. You have as an objective to do something. So as teachers, we want to strive to teach as clearly and efficiently and well as possible. We strive to be the best teachers we can be.
Exactly.
And the other word and confusing correction that I'd like to review is related to bread. So if you leave bread out for a long time and it goes like hard, and then it's not nice, it's not tasty, it's not soft. What word would you use to describe it?
So I would call that bread stale.
Exactly. Perfect.
Stale.
And then if, let's say, for example, the bread turns green or blue, what word would you use to describe it then?
Then it would be moldy.
Easy peasy. So if the moldy bread, it's not stale. If it's stale, it's a bit hard. And sometimes, many people watching this might be familiar with gazpacho, the Spanish cold tomato soup. Usually you use stale bread to make it because it's all about making the most of the leftovers. So then if you cannot have that bread in a sandwich, for example, maybe you can put it in some water and then it comes back to life, so to speak, and you can blitz it and blend it to make gazpacho.
Exactly. Yeah. Or French toast. The best French toast uses slightly stale bread. And I don't think your guests would be very happy with you if you used moldy bread for their French toast. So you might be losing some friends over this mistake.
Fun little fact. It just came to me right now. In French, actually, French toast is called pain perdu, which is actually translated to lost toast. Lost bread, sorry.
Oh, okay.
So
I didn't know
lost
that.
bread, French toast. Very interesting because you might lose friends if you give them some moldy
French toast. Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, it just came to me and I thought I'd say it. Now, we've got about 10 more minutes or something like that. So before we finish and call it a day, let's just take it in turns to ask each other some random questions so people can practice their listening and learn a little bit more about us. So first things first, what is your favorite food, Ash, or one of your favorite foods?
Oh, gosh. Probably, let's say, yes, probably not moldy French toast. No, a burrito. I love burritos. I love Mexican food in general, but a really nice burrito with good salsa and spicy sauce and tons of vegetables. I like it because it's a balanced meal, and you can take it wherever you want. It's very easy to eat. Yeah, burritos.
Very practical.
And yourself?
It's difficult. I think I have a few options. I love all pizzas. I love burgers. Then for Spanish food, I love lots of different types of tapas, and I love seafood and shellfish too. Basically, I'm a foodie and I love everything. But then if I had to choose, like maybe not one specific dish, but a combination of dishes, it would be curries. So I love spicy curries, in particular Indian or Pakistani curries. But there's just so many flavors, so much going on. I love spicy food, but looking at me, I don't handle it very well because my cheeks go bright red. I start sweating buckets. But deep inside, I'm having a great time.
It's like a pain and pleasure together.
Yeah. Well, narcissist. Okay, anyway, number two, if you weren't a teacher and if you weren't a dance teacher either, what would you do? What do you think you would be doing right now if you hadn't opted for becoming an English teacher online?
I really enjoy creating content. So, of course, I make plenty of English videos. I also do a lot of other videos as well for other various channels that I own or I work with. And I really love being a creative and creating content. So probably I would do that full time, I guess. I would be a content creator full time. So maybe just not in the English niche, but yeah, content creator, I think.
Like, sounds good. I think it's what's trending at the moment. Everybody wants to be a content creator.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. That's true. I think, everyone can be. It just requires a little bit of commitment and some, passion. That's it. Commitment and passion. That's all you need.
Exactly.
Cool. Lovely. Shall I go for the next question?
After you, the ball is
Because
in your court.
lovely stuff. Good. What have you been watching recently? What series or film have you watched recently and thought, wow, this is great?
Well, quite a lot of things actually, but the thing that I've been watching most recently, and I actually binge watched, so I watched like a whole season in 2 days. So I watched back-to-back episodes, one after another, is a kind of competition reality game show, which came out like 2 years ago in the UK, but I never actually got round to watching it. And it's called The Traitors.
Mm.
So the traitors is about people who betray others, and there is no trust. Everybody is living a lie. And it takes 22 different contestants to a really beautiful Scottish castle in the Highlands. And then they all have to basically, it's a popularity contest almost. But you have three people who are traitors, and the rest are faithful. And then
Mhm.
every day they have different challenges in order to win more money for everybody, but only one, two, or three people will win everything in the end. And
Mhm.
every night, the usually three traitors get together and they decide who they want to murder.
Okay.
There's no real actual violence here, but
Mhm.
they choose to get rid of someone from the competition and then they don't turn up
Mhm.
the next day. And the faithful, the other contestants, have to guess who the traitors are. So it's
Mm.
basically the minority of the traitors trying to murder the faithful against the majority of the faithful trying to banish the traitors. Because if they guess and successfully vote who the traitors are, they are banished and kicked out of the castle. Uh,
Oh, wow.
a simple premise, but
Mm.
it's really addictive and it leaves you with that kind of cliffhanger at the end of every episode where you just want to carry on watching it to see what happens next. And it's pretty good for practicing your British English too, because they take people from all over the UK with lots and lots of short interviews asking them questions. So I'd recommend it. The Traitors.
I'll note that one down. That sounds quite interesting. I have heard, a lot of good things about that series, but I myself haven't had a chance to check it out yet. So I should do. I should do, definitely. It's on my list.
It's addictive and it's easy watching if you've had a hard day and lots of classes or whatever, and you just want to sit down and not think. It's perfect.
Fantastic. I'll give it a go.
Let's do one or two more. So, tell me, related to music, what is the last gig you went to? What's the last concert you attended?
Oh, that's a really good question. I've been to a few in Japan, but I wouldn't really say they were like noteworthy. They didn't really stick in my mind, let's say. So the last proper decent gig I went to was one in Leeds. Um, it was a rock and punk festival. It was very, very good. And they had Bowling for Soup and some other very famous pop punk bands and rock bands. It was very, very good. Lots of mosh pits.
Oh,
Weather was lovely. Food and drink were very overpriced as always. But yeah, it was very fun. It was like a full day of music. It was a festival, really. So
okay,
it was
interesting.
good.
Mosh pits. What are mosh pits? Could you describe
Oh
them for our
gosh.
listeners?
So they're not really my thing, but I like the music and it kind of comes with part of the music, unfortunately. But mosh pits are when a lot of people decide to kind of, oh my gosh, fling themselves around basically in a circle, in an enclosed circle within the crowd. And so they're all running and bumping into each other and going crazy and being very, let's say, animalistic. It's funny. It's very fun to watch. It can be fun if you're inside, but it's not for everyone, 100%. And yeah, but apparently there's a very strict kind of code of honor within the mosh pit. So as soon as someone goes down, as soon as someone falls down, everybody gets them back up and moves them to the side so that they don't get trampled on or stood on, which is like, I think that's really kind of noble. Same with stage diving, and a lot of people do crowd surfing. So that's where, you know, they'll jump up and people pass them to the front of the crowd like this. And yeah, there's a lot of kind of rules around that. So if you're there and there's a woman who's especially like a smaller woman, all the men need to crowd around her to then make sure that she's not lifting her hands up just in case the person falls on top of her or something like that. But yeah, it's very crazy, and it's very entertaining, let's say.
There's lots of unwritten rules.
Yes, yeah.
If you ever go to a concert and you see a circle starting and people start like screaming and shouting and you're very close, and then you become part of the circle and you don't want to be hit by anyone, please get out of there.
Yeah, just I mean,
out of the mosh pit.
Yeah, you should be able to kind of sneak through back from the crowd and things like that. And you know, if you are stuck inside of a mosh pit that is just starting, just turn around and say to the next person, "Oh, I don't want to be in the mosh." And there we go. Now, a really useful English phrase if you're in a concert. I don't want to be in the mosh. And then people will open kind of a space for you to kind of get out. And people are very, especially in those spheres and those kind of communities, people are very, very understanding of people's kind of boundaries and what they want and what they don't want. And so you'll actually find that, you know, these kind of niche concerts with these like all these unwritten rules are actually a lot friendlier, even though they might look scarier. They're a lot friendlier than, say, you know, a very typical pop concert where people are just kind of in their own world and they're not really caring about anything else. So it's very interesting, very, very interesting stuff.
No, it sounds good. And given that we've mentioned Leeds, have you ever been to Leeds Fest?
No, I've not been to Leeds Fest. No, I haven't. Is it good?
Well, to be honest, I haven't been for a very long time because I went to my first festival when I was 16, and this was Leeds Fest. And I went for the whole weekend and I camped there. And this is what it's reminding me of. So it's making me think like, going to Leeds Fest when I was in sixth form, when I was like 16, 17, and not drinking at all. I was only 16, 17, of course. But there were loads of mosh pits. And if I was with my friends, we'd get really up for it and really enthusiastic. I can't say I've been anywhere near a mosh pit in a good 5, 6, 7, 8 years, but maybe it's time to go
maybe
back.
It's time back to the mosh. Back to the mosh. This is the summer of mosh. Maybe so. I tell you what, going to a festival in the nice, you know, when it's like British sunshine, summertime, you can't beat that feeling. It's just an amazing day. Especially as long as you stay hydrated, you'll have an amazing time. It's fantastic. And I don't think anywhere does, you know, summer music festivals like the UK. I think we're one of a kind.
Exactly. Yeah. So I hope everybody, you can start having a look on Glastonbury website, Leeds Fest, Reading Festival. Check it out and you can live something very, very English. And if you want to mosh, you can mosh.
Yeah. Go for it. Give it a go.
Awesome. I think we'll call it a day there. We'll end it for that because we've been speaking for like 40 minutes. First, we were having a chat about yourself and your English teaching career. Then from there, we mentioned Japan, the way of life there, the fact that people are workaholics, before getting into the nitty-gritty of your correcting videos. And we've just finished off by asking each other some random questions and kind of waffling on. A nice expression that I like to use, it's a phrasal verb, to waffle on, is to kind of speak aimlessly without focusing on a specific topic, and you can kind of go from one topic to another. So we were just waffling on about gigs, concerts, festivals, and mosh pits. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, yeah.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Ash. It's been a pleasure to have you here, and maybe we'll do the same in the future. Who knows?
Exactly. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be here and pleasure to speak with you. And I hope all the listeners have found, a lot of new vocabulary and they can have a listen and understand, a little bit more about British culture and our way of life and our mentality as well.
Exactly. Fingers crossed. So on that note, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions for either of us, don't forget to write them in the comments. Subscribe for more, and see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and see you next time.